What if all you ever knew about your family, your identity, your privacy, your sense of self, was taken away from you bit by bit on national television? What if millions of people picked apart your every step, every emotion, and every hidden detail? And you had no say over how it was reported? This was the life of Gwen Brown while she was in the limelight of Sister Wives. As the daughter of Kody Brown, her life was never just hers. It was a scripted narrative for millions of viewers, where her deepest struggles weren't hidden but broadcast for entertainment. Her personal moments turned into public drama. Imagine trying to find yourself amid the chaos of a family fractured by secrets, favoritism, and rigid patriarchal rules, all while the world watches your every step. Imagine the heartache of having to be forced to come out as bisexual for no reason other than producers wanted a storyline. The agony of being emotionally shut down by your own dad. And still, those cameras record your every utterance. This is not only a reality TV tale, it's an unflinching, honest account of survival, self-discovery, and taking back your voice when the world tells you to stay quiet. Gwen's journey reveals the ugly price of fame, the cost of growing up under a public microscope, and the struggle to escape from a family legacy that attempts to predetermine her. Friday afternoon marked the day that Gwen lived in the shadow no more. But today, she's standing up, speaking out, shattering the silence, and defying the very systems that sought to keep her in her place. Join me as we go deep inside Gwen Brown's emotional struggle, her identity crisis, her twisted relationship with her father, the financial and emotional drain of living with the Brown family, and how she's finally taking back her life on her own terms. If you've ever felt trapped by expectation, by family, by society, or even by your own fears, Gwen's story will haunt you in ways you never thought possible. This isn't a tale about a reality TV personality. It's a tale of bravery, resilience, and an uncompromising quest to be fully seen and heard. So, don't scroll away until you're sure you're going to stay. Now, because what you're going to hear is going to shift the way you understand fame, family, and the struggle to be yourself. Suppose I were to tell you that having your childhood unfold in front of millions of eyes, on national television, in a family that's always under the spotlight, has the potential to break your own sense of self. Picture every moment of your life, your deepest secrets and struggles, bared for the world to scrutinize and dissect. No say in the narrative being created around you. For Gwen Brown, this was no mere scenario, it was her everyday life. From the beginning, as Kody Brown's daughter, Gwen's life was dictated and influenced by the cameras of Sister Wives. Don't be fooled by the glamour you'd expect from reality television. Behind the scenes, Gwen experienced inordinate pressure to conform to a particular role, emotional detachment from her father, and an ongoing struggle to be heard in a dysfunctional family. The strain of it all took a profound toll on her mental well-being and conception of who she was and wasn't. And here's a twist no one sees. Fame may have brought drama and attention, but it also came with a secret cost. Behind the smiling faces and the polygamist family dynamics lies a far more complex and painful story, a story Gwen has bravely started to share. It's a story about emotional struggles that most viewers never get to witness. Hey everyone, I'm Mara, and welcome to TLC's Next Chapter. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on Gwen Brown's emotional journey, a story marked by pain, discovery, and resilience. If you're ready to get the truth behind the reality TV, be sure to subscribe and leave a comment with your opinion. Trust me, this is one tale you don't want to miss. From the moment Gwen stepped onto the Sister Wives stage as a kid, her life stopped being her own. Growing up in a family that's not only unusual, but also under the microscope of millions all the time, Gwen never had the opportunity to know privacy or normalcy. Her life was controlled by cameras, producers, and the gaze of a whole audience every step she took picked apart and criticized. What did this public life cost her? How was it growing up without a sanctuary, without being able to really be yourself? Stick with me as we go further into Gwen's complex relationship with her father, her brave public coming out, and the empowering lessons she's learned along the way. This is a tale of survival, heartbreak, and discovering your own voice in the midst of chaos. Ready to learn the truth about the family you believed you knew? Let's begin. But as the years went by and Gwen became an adult, her own personal struggle in the limelight was one of her greatest conflicts to date. It was an ongoing inner tug-of-war between whom she was supposed to be and who she really felt on the inside. Envision spending your whole childhood in a fishbowl. Every move, every word, not only witnessed by your family, but by millions of strangers worldwide. The not-so-gentle wake-up call of such a life. The distinction between your private and public self begins to blur. Gwen wasn't merely an actor on the show, she was made into a plot. A character whose life, choices, and emotions were picked apart, analyzed, and judged by a population she never agreed to be a part of. First, being on television may have been a far-off, sort of dreamlike thing for a kid. But as Gwen matured, that burden of those cameras became more oppressive. The ongoing intrusion into her privacy compelled her to lead two existences, the actual Gwen and the Gwen created by producers, audiences, and even the expectations of her own family. This wasn't simply about being an adolescent struggling with identity. It was being an adolescent bared under a microscope. Each of the cringeworthy phases, each of the rebellions, each of the epiphanies was out there for the world to see. Now consider the dilemma of trying to figure out who you are, your sexual orientation, your identity, something very intimate and tending to be confusing. For most individuals, this is an internalized process, a sanctified area in which one thinks. But for Gwen, it was a public narrative, something she was compelled to relate to and work through on television. Her journey towards self-discovery was no longer a solitary one, it was a soap opera plot twist in a reality television show that lived on human angst. Her bisexual coming out was a turning point, albeit one that wasn't in Gwen's plans to introduce to the world. Rather, she was forced into the limelight by producers who recognized it as an empowering narrative thread, well-suited to the soap drama. Was it liberating for Gwen, then, to at last come out and be herself? The solution isn't easy. On the one hand, yes, it was liberating in that she no longer had to conceal who she truly was. But on the other hand, it was oppressive because it wasn't a choice she made for herself. It was a moment manufactured for an audience. The public identity she was compelled to embrace was so distant from the private person she was still trying to understand and nurture. In a life where privacy was a luxury she could never afford, Gwen found herself caught in a constant struggle between her real self and the facade the producers and cameras insisted she present to the world. And don't forget, she was a teenager dealing with all of this while juggling the intricate and complicated family dynamics, particularly her tense relationship with her father, Kody Brown. According to MacDonald, her inner world and actual feelings were constantly colliding with the public image she had to act out. Living in a reality TV family, and one as scrutinized as the Browns, especially, makes for a special kind of pressure. It's not fame, really. It's how fame warps your sense of self. Gwen never got to just be an ordinary kid, to stumble and make mistakes without those stumbles and mistakes being filmed, dissected, and criticized. That stress became a crucial aspect of her personal development, whether or not she liked it. Herewith, the strong turn. Despite all these difficulties, Gwen ultimately found her voice. She started speaking up about the injustice of it all, battling hard to have her own truth in her own terms. The girl who had felt only like an inactive character in the story of her family slowly became a young woman who wouldn't hesitate to tell her part of the truth, no matter how awkward it would make other people. But what remains is a question. When you've spent your whole life in front of cameras, who are you when the cameras at last cease running? Gwen's path from a lost little girl trying to find herself to a strong woman asserting herself is fantastically complex and multifaceted. The limelight undoubtedly defined her existence, but it also made her become tougher in ways she could never have imagined. One of the strongest and most emotional scenes in Gwen Brown's life was when she openly came out as bisexual on Sister Wives. But the thing is, this wasn't something Gwen chose to do on a whim. It was a moment pushed on her by the show's producers. Pause for a second and imagine being a young person still figuring out who you are, and suddenly an entire TV crew is urging you to reveal your deepest, most private truth to millions. Gwen wasn't prepared to open up about her sexuality to the world, but Sister Wives wasn't a family program. It was a machine that required dramatic content, storylines, and moments that would generate buzz and keep people watching. Her coming out wasn't just an individual milestone, it was a calculated storyline meant to increase the drama of the show. That stress would be too much for anyone, But for Gwen, who had spent her entire life under constant scrutiny, it was akin to a devastating intrusion on the privacy she longed for. What hit Gwen the hardest wasn't so much being compelled to come out into the open, it was the cultural mandate that came with the entire process. She resented the notion that LGBTQ+ individuals are forced to make sweeping public declarations regarding their sexuality, but heterosexuals can just live in silence, never having to confess theirs. For Gwen, coming out was not so much a matter of individual preference, but more a capricious, superfluous demand of society. A badge that had to be worn not because it rang true, but due to the imperative to belong in boxes. The psychological toll of being coerced into such a public revelation was immense. Gwen had always grappled with the painful fact that her personal life wasn't really hers. She owned it for everyone else. From millions of television viewers, to the producers of her show, to critical bloggers and tweeters, her most intimate moments were everyone's concern. It was turned into a public spectacle in coming out, something that should have been an intensely personal choice. For Gwen, who had lived almost her whole life on the microscope, this served only to heighten the feeling of losing control of her own narrative. It wasn't about sharing her truth as much as it was about having that truth distorted, molded, and presented to the world in a manner that was entirely unfamiliar to her. The cost this took on Gwen's sense of privacy and agency in her own story was immense, something which is difficult to fully comprehend unless you've experienced it firsthand. And when we discuss the intricacies of Gwen's life, we can't help but mention the complex relationship she shares with her father, Kody Brown. Over the years, that relationship grew even more strained as Gwen began to find her own identity. Known for his rigid, patriarchal views and strict religious values, Kody wasn't exactly the kind of father to provide emotional warmth or support. This emotional distance hurt Gwen deeply, especially as she started to understand her place in the family's hierarchy. Where sister wives presented an image of love uniting the family, behind the scenes, Gwen frequently felt like she was invisible. Kody's all-consuming interest in his youngest children with Robin left a stark delineation between the family. Gwen and her siblings from Kody's previous marriages were frequently left to fend for themselves, feeling ignored and forgotten. Emotionally, Kody was aloof, frequently prioritizing the needs of Robin's children over his older children. As Gwen grew older, she painfully felt this was not an equal opportunity relationship, which only made her carry the feeling of being neglected that much deeper. Back in previous seasons of Sister Wives, Gao was seen struggling emotionally in real time. As vivid as it can get is that one family discussion about the very complicated logistics of Kody's multiple relationships. Similar to some of her siblings, Gwen felt like an afterthought in these talks. Kody was laser beam focused on the requirements of his children with Robin, but seldom put the same amount of effort into relating with his older children. Gwen, who is one of the more vocal Brown kids, was frequently left to sort through her emotions and problems by herself. But it wasn't until a revealing, candid discussion in later seasons that Gwen came to fully understand how far her relationship with her dad had drifted. She revealed feeling as though she was never really a priority to Kody, reflecting on a time when she felt utterly disconnected from him. That hit hard. While the family appeared close and cute in public, Gwen realized she had never truly been included in the emotional center of it. Instead, she was just another face in a reality TV storyline that didn't seem to care about her genuine personal struggles. Her frustration wasn't so much about being overlooked, but feeling to be cut out of a family dynamic that clearly favored others. Kody's favoritism towards the younger ones he had with Robin was made extremely apparent to Gwen and her elder siblings, that in his heart and priorities, they would never be on the same level. An emotional divide was something that seemed to mark Gwen's journey continuing even past the close of cameras for filming. That was also a complication additional financial divide within the Brown family. While Kody and his wives profited from their work on Sister Wives, the kids whose lives were scrutinized day and night by the public did not see any financial gain from the show. This imbalance created intense anger and resentment, particularly among Gwen and her siblings who had no control over how their personal lives were shared with millions. The irony was not lost on them. The family's reality TV stardom provided financial stability for the adults, in large part due to Kody and his wives' dedication to keeping the show going. However, as the adults benefited, the kids were left observing and going unseen in more than one sense. As Kody and his wives benefited financially from the show, the children, whose own real-life challenges and struggles with growing up were broadcast, were basically unpaid. Gwen, along with many of her siblings, was compelled to work through not only the emotional struggles, but also the economic future without seeing any direct pay for the emotional labor she provided to the cameras. This fiscal imbalance reverberates throughout the Brown family narrative, but struck particularly hard for Gwen, who was now old enough to see clearly the stark disparity between the family's increasing wealth and her own financial gain. Gwen's mother, Christine, saw this glaring problem and battled hard to secure her children's futures in a manner that she felt was equitable. One of her most admirable endeavors was establishing college funds for every one of her children, ensuring they had a monetary safety net as they reached adulthood. This was a moving display of motherly love and wisdom, yet also added to the uneven nature of the family's money distribution. While Christine assumed responsibility for defending her children's futures, the rest of the financial imbalance in the Brown family was irrefutable. Gwen, however, was acutely conscious of the stark contrast between her mother's eagerness and the bitter truth of the family's finances. The show had brought economic security to the Browns, but at an emotional and psychological expense for Gwen and her brothers. They were essentially unpaid for their appearances, while the adults reaped significant rewards, a fact that only added to Gwen's growing disillusionment. Even though Christine did what she could to provide for her children, the underlying inequities were impossible to ignore. The psychological cost of fame was already overshadowing any profit the family had gained. This stress about money became a staple of Gwen's development as she grew older. The awareness of having been emotionally manipulated for the family's prosperity had a lasting effect, particularly on her already tenuous relationship with her father, Kody. In the end, Gwen's saga teaches us that although sister wives might have brought monetary stability, it required great emotional concessions, especially from the children whose lives were manipulated in order to frame the narrative of the show. Gwen's emotional path has been nothing less than metamorphic. She was made famous as a child, with photographs recording moments that weren't just personal, but intimate. She spent years living in the shadow of her family's narrative, a passive participant in a story that was never completely hers to control. But as Gwen matured, she came to realize the actual emotional price of celebrity and how it wore down her identity. Early on, belonging to sister wives seemed like another aspect of her life. This was her family, and their lives were on display. Eventually, though, Gwen began to feel suffocated by the roles the cameras placed on her. There was no space for her to really discover who she was outside of the public eye. The intricate family dynamics and ceaseless judgment gradually eroded her feelings of privacy and self. Gwen's path to selfhood wasn't abrupt. It was a gradual realization. It started the very instant that she ceased allowing other people to define her. No longer content to be the girl that others had fashioned for her, Gwen began to voice her opinions. She fought against the image they had made for her and started taking control of her own story back. The days of being a spectator standing in the background were over. Gwen was set on creating herself based on her own terms. She wanted to be known for something other than where she stood in the Brown family or as a reality television personality. Her mission? In order to create an identity that was real and authentic to the person she actually was, apart from family demands and the opinion of others. One of the most significant milestones in Gwen's development was her refusal of the archaic patriarchal ideals advocated for by her father, Kody. Throughout her childhood, along with most of her siblings, Gwen had lived under the strict religious and family rules that governed their lives. The notion that Kody, as the father, had complete control was one that Gwen was never able to fully embrace. Over time, the patriarchal regime only served to push her farther away, compelling her to resist the restrictive model that she was supposed to conform to. Today, Gwen's identity is based on truth, autonomy, and being brave enough to live hers, regardless of the cost. Her choice to come out openly as bisexual, her negative comments about her father's behavior, and her refusal to accept the traditional roles of her family all point to her incredible strength. Gwen no longer needs the approval of the old ways of the family. Rather, she's creating a new path based on profound self-knowledge and self-acceptance. The journey has not been an easy one, but Gwen is tougher for it. Years of emotional turmoil, conformity pressure, and living in the constant spotlight of reality TV have made her the stronger, more empowered woman better in control of her future. It's not simply a matter of breaking with old traditions or defying the spotlight pressure of celebrity. It's a matter of forging her own identity and affirming the truth that her value is not determined by the past, but by what she is becoming. Despite all the obstacles, it's this inner change that grants Gwen true power. In her own voice, she's learning at last to claim her story, and that's what gives it strength. Gwen Brown's tale is more than learning to grow up on TV. It's a compelling one of bravery, resilience, and the constant quest for self-worth. In drama within the family, the psychological damage of reality television, and the fight to free herself from expectation, Gwen has become one of the Brown family's most real voices. Her story is a testament to the emotional struggles that so many go through when being forced into living a life dictated by others. Her courage to publicly come out, break away from her father's strict ways, and forge her own path, in spite of all the scrutiny, is a testament to what it really means to be yourself. Her tale isn't one that only speaks to Sister Wives fans. It resonates with anyone who's ever had to battle for the right to be heard and understood for who they truly are. So, take a minute to think. How has Gwen's tale affected you? What can we learn from her experience? If you enjoyed Gwen's experience as much as I did, don't forget to like this video, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe for more moving and revelation-filled stories about the Brown family.